I made the argument the other day that I think Georgia deserved to drop from number 1 to number 2 in that AP poll, in the college football rankings, to Texas. Texas moving up. Now, just because I agree with the movement in the poll and with Georgia dropping, I still think that we need to pump the brakes on freaking out. There's a lot of Munson going on. There's a lot of Georgia fans really freaking out. There's a lot of national media people who, now it's Texas, and it's just too quick. It's too early to just totally flip the switch and think that the sky is falling in Athens and think that the sky is falling for Georgia. A lot of people are freaking out about Carson Beck and his injury. I think we need to wait a little bit more to get a clear answer on that in terms of his status for the Alabama game. But I know that people are concerned. But I think there's a few reasons why you shouldn't freak out about Georgia. I've got them listed, and I'm gonna run through them and talk about this for a minute. Number one, I think I've got 4 reasons why Georgia should just get better as the year goes on. And number 1 is the defense will get better. I think that the defense is going to get better. Why? They're not healthy right now. Michael Williams is out. Warren Prince is out. Jordan Hall, a guy that was expected to make a bigger impact this season, hasn't played the season yet. They got Xavier McLeod, who didn't play until McLeod, a transfer defensive lineman who didn't play until this past Kentucky game. There's a lot of movement on that defensive line, a unit that you enter the season for the second season in a row, and you're like, is this group going to get better? Because we know that they've lost a lot of guys. Well, this group will get better as it gets healthier. Partially results of the injury situation, partially results of these guys are just getting better. Think about who has stepped up and who has really played well while they've dealt with defensive line injuries. Jalen Walker, right? Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, Christian Miller is playing a lot. These guys are playing a lot of snaps. Jalen Walker is really breaking out for this Georgia defense. He's got a sack and a half. You go look at the numbers for Jalen Walker, and you see the sack and a half, right? And that's from the Clemson game. But what you don't see are all of the QB pressures that he had against Brock Vandagriff, all the QB hits. I don't like that penalty they called when he drove Brock Vandagriff into the ground. It's a football tackle, guys. Come on. He's getting a lot better. Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins is a guy that's dealt with a ton of injuries in his Georgia career. A few years ago, he was the number 1 high school player in South Carolina. He was a 4-star defensive lineman. He's making a lot of plays. He was dealing with an injury himself in the Kentucky game, comes back in, and is playing well. So I think that other guys are getting an opportunity to really show, hey, we can be stars as well. It's helping out Georgia in the long run, and when the other guys are implemented in, they'll have that depth on the defensive line that you need to beat an Alabama on the road, to beat a Texas on the road. In addition to the defensive line, you've got the best linebacker room in college football between C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, Smile Mondon, and all the guys you have behind them. And I think the secondary is a secondary that will continue to gel. To me, from what I've been watching, it seems like they don't 100% know exactly which group they want out there. Now, I probably am wrong, and I'm just taking them subbing in different packages over and over as that, but it seems like there's a little bit of, is it going to be Janelle Aguero out there as star? Is it going to be this guy out there at that spot? It seems like another 5 or 6, but not exactly where they want them. And if that's not true, at the very minimum, there's young guys that still need to get better. Janelle Aguero is playing significant snaps for the first time. KJ Bolden got to college in December, January, right? Those guys are gelling. Julian Humphrey hasn't played a lot of significant snaps. I think that secondary room will get better, as it's proven to get better as the year goes on the last few years. So I do think that Georgia's defense will get better as the year goes on. The number 1 reason, not to freak out, right? Defense. Ryan Clear from Dawg Post talking about why I think Georgia will be just fine, why they're seeing the doctor this weekend, and why you shouldn't really be hitting the panic meter on the Bulldogs yet. Our newsletter is linked in the description down below. Best way to stay up to date with Georgia football news is by signing up for our newsletter. All right, second reason, that Clemson win's looking a little bit better. As we speak, I'm recording this, the noon kickoff games, Georgia's first bye week, the noon kickoff games have already started. I saw Marshall go right down the field on Ohio State, on the Ohio State scoring 2 plays. I also saw Clemson put up 28 points in the first quarter, right? I think that's, is it still 28, or at this point is it worse? I'm double checking. 28-0 with a minute left in the first quarter. Clemson's annihilating NC State, a team that was ranked to start the year but turned out to be not that good. They annihilated App State last week. Teams that they should be, right? App State ended up getting crushed by South Alabama the other night. So what do we make of the App State win? But here's the thing. Clemson put up like almost 700 total yards or something like that, something crazy against App State. Almost all of their production coming in the first half. Cade Klubnik only has 2 incompletions. Cade Klubnik's running around against NC State. This Clemson team is better than what they looked like against the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia strangled Clemson. They did not allow them to move the ball down the field, and when they did, they didn't break. They bent, but they didn't break. That's what happened in that Clemson game, and then Georgia crushes Clemson in the second half offensively. So I think that Clemson win's looking even a little bit better. It's one of the best wins in college football this year. It just is. A 34-3 win on a neutral site against a team that's ranked and a team that could totally win its conference. It's one of the best wins in college football, and then it's going to look really good on Georgia's resume at the end of the year if Clemson continues to improve. But maybe, Clemson's got to play some more good teams, but that win's starting to look a little bit better. Reason number 3, it is still too early to definitively hand out crowns, medals, trophies, crowns, right? LeBron James. It's too early to give it to Texas. It's too early to give it to Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Why? Ole Miss hasn't played anybody yet. Texas, they've got that win on the road against Michigan. I don't think Michigan's all that hot. I think USC's going to beat them today. We'll see. Obviously, TBD on that. Otherwise, they're taking care of business against cupcake teams. Alabama, taking care of business against Western Kentucky and Wisconsin. But then you look at what happened in the South Florida game, and I don't care what the score says. Go look at the play-by-play sheet. Alabama, almost all of their scoring came at the end of that game. That was a tight game for 3 quarters and a half. 3.5 quarters against South Florida at home in Tuscaloosa, the night that it's Saban Field. A lot going on, and Alabama just didn't play well that night. Is that worse than Georgia almost losing to Kentucky on the road? Is it? I don't think so, and that's probably why Georgia's ranked ahead of Alabama. Tennessee hasn't played anybody. It's playing somebody today, Oklahoma, right? Obviously, I'm recording this during the noon games. That hasn't happened yet. Does Tennessee win or lose to Oklahoma? So you can't give out these crowns to all these teams. Missouri, a team that dropped to number 7 in the rankings after being number 6 the week before. Another team that looks really good but hasn't really played. I mean, they beat Boston College from behind. I don't think that's a bad win. That's a pretty good one, actually. Reason number 4, I told you I had 4 reasons. Here is the last one. Give the offense a little bit more time. Whoa, Ryan. It's not Carson Beck's first year as a starter anymore. It's not Mike Bobo's first year as the offensive coordinator at Georgia after a long time. It's not their first year gelling together. They've improved the wide receiver room. Why should we give the offense more time? They improved the running back room because they need time to gel. Needs time to gel. Carson Beck and Georgia on offense last year. First few games. They were good, right? They were winning games against cupcake teams, put up good numbers against UAB. You blow out Ball State. You blow out, I think it was UT Martin back a year ago. Yeah, that's who they blew out. And then they go to the road, they play Auburn, and they struggle again. Well, it looked like that this past week. And then what happened? The final drive when you needed it, Carson Beck delivered some nice throws. Georgia goes on, and they run the clock out for the most part. Wasn't quite as good as what they did at Auburn when Beck and Bowers were just connecting on big-time throw and catch over and over, eventually leading to that game-winning touchdown. But what happened after Georgia had to claw its way out and win a road game against a team that you should have beaten by multiple touchdowns? What happened? Well, Georgia turns around, they come home to Athens, and then they blow out Kentucky. They put up 600 total yards of offense. Carson Beck has one of his best statistical days. I just think it's too early to count out Georgia and to just say they're going to keep falling. This is just not the championship contending team. That may end up being a true statement. That may end up actually happening. Georgia may actually not be the championship contender that we all think it. But I think for the reasons that I've stated, the Clemson win looking better. Georgia's defense, it's going to get better. I really believe it's going to get better. I think the offense just needs a little bit more time because I do think this is an offense that has 40 points per game in its wheelhouse. It's probably not going to get that, right? All these road games, all these difficult games. And also, it's just too early to just determine that these other contenders... I didn't even mention Ohio State. Ohio State let Marshall... I mentioned that part. They let Marshall go down and score on the first drive. That's okay. They'll probably end up killing Marshall in this game. But you know what I mean? It's too early to hand out all these trophies and everything. Georgia's just as much in the mix as these other teams. And for these reasons, you shouldn't be freaking out. And you should be signing up for our newsletter. I thank you if you are doing so. Thanks for watching.